know if there's anybody here from our district.
What? Are we ready to go, Pam?
I didn't even know they were there.
I'm kidding you.
Probably wouldn't help anyway. Oh, gee.
See, I know you would know the differences in that.
Great.
We will now begin our second forum for the evening. Welcome to the citizens of San Joaquin County. This is a candidate forum for the November election for the position of District 4 representative with the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors. The League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County is sponsoring this forum, and we thank the City of Stockton for allowing us to hold and videotape it here in these chambers. My name is Mary Bava, and I'm the moderator for the forums this evening. The forum will last 45 minutes. Candidates will have 1 minute each for their opening statements, 2 minutes for closing comments, and 1.5 minutes to respond to each question from the panelist. A timekeeper will keep track of the time, raising placards when there are 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, and then stop when the time is up. Panelists will pose the same question to each candidate. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer first in rotation. For example, candidate A will answer question 1 first, and candidate B will answer question 2 first, and so on. Candidates have already selected the order for their opening and closing statements by drawing numbers. We ask audience members to hold their applause until the forum is completed so that we have more time for questions to be asked and answered, and we will save our applause for the end of the evening. We ask that all be respectful of the candidates and turn off cell phones. And as we get started, I will introduce our panelists for the evening. First, we have Mr. Bobby Vivens. He's the president of the Stockton chapter of the NAACP. Mike Clockey is the editor of The Record. And Daphne Shaw is a board member for the League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County, Stockton chapter. And our candidates are Mr. Russ Munson and Mr. Chuck Winn. Thank you all for being with us this evening. We will start now with the opening statements, and the opening statement will first be made by Mr. Winn. You have 1 minute.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. Russ and I just did a forum Tuesday night, and we had a 4-minute opening, so I'll have to really cut it down. I've led 2 lives. My first life I led with the California Highway Patrol, by which in the last 19 years I was a commander. And the benefit of that was I had the opportunity to basically run in the public sector a business which was operating first in Sacramento with the Commissioner's Office, and then subsequently in San Jose County, Modesto, for 14 years before I retired. And as the boss, it was great, but you are also responsible for the operations and all the things that go on in any large enterprise. The second life has been on the City Council of Ripon, and I've spent 12 years there. I'm currently the mayor. And the one thing I learned very quickly is that being in elected office on a board or a council or any kind of public body is that you have to get other members to vote with you to get anything done. So it's not an autocracy. By virtue of that, I've had the opportunity to learn through those years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Munson.
Hello. Thank you again for inviting me tonight, and like Chuck, I'm going to keep it short as I can for that first quick minute. Why am I running? I'm 67 years old. I've been married 45 years. I've been in business on my own for the last 35 years. I employ 250 people right now, and I made a decision a year ago after really evaluating where I was in life to give back to our community and to the county. I have a tremendous amount of experience here in the county, working with all the different cities, the towns over that last 30 years, and in the last 15 years have built the Winding Roses in Lodi. And like I said, I currently employ 250 people. So I think basically bringing that experience from the business point of view is something I have to offer for the county of San Joaquin that is not always there. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now start with our questions by the panel members. Mr. Bivens will ask the first question of Mr. Winn.
Okay. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, what is your first priority on the board?
Well, the first priority actually is to stop the twin tunnels, because water is probably the #1 priority throughout the county in all sectors. And the way we do that is obviously work with our legislators and working with Congress, members of Congress, to make sure that whatever can be done to halt that particular project would be stopped. The reason I say that is not only because it doesn't add any additional water, but it also, without water, we really can't grow our economy, because San Joaquin County is an agricultural county, and therefore the more water we have, the more crops we can grow, the more cattle we can raise. And so from that standpoint, it's certainly the lifeblood of what we need here. Secondly, there's a other issue in regards to economic development. And I think that there's great opportunities here in San Joaquin County, making the airport an international airport, of course the port that we have, and also the freeway or transportation structure that we see building on a daily basis. I think there's opportunities abound, and I think San Joaquin County is on the precipice of great things in regards to economic development. I'm on the San Joaquin Partnership Board, and one of the things that we're doing there is we're working with the Silicon Valley to attract high-tech jobs into this county. And by virtue of that, because we have so many of them that live here that commute over the Altamont, that we're the prime spot to have an opportunity to bring some of those businesses with lower land costs, certainly cutting down on the commuters, and certainly the pollution that it generates. So those are some of the few things that I would look at in regards to economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Munson.
For me,
Sorry,
again,
1 second. We could get our time coordinated. Are we set? Thank you, Mr. Munson.
for me, it's the same. To start with water, we all know that the Twin Tunnels is a project that we're against here in the valley. It doesn't provide any more water, but more importantly, I think what I'm going to focus on is how we bring the agencies within our San Joaquin County together, that's all the different irrigation districts, to respond to the state mandates for controlling water. That being an issue that's going to affect all of us, whether it's being any type of development, residential or economic development. Potentially it could slow down all development as it occurs here in the county as we look at economic development. So water is the main issue I'm going to work with, and to try and bring those agencies together. Again, safety for our families and for the region is very important to me. That's the continuing to work with the sheriff to find out how we can provide better safety in the county areas. We're working real hard on that, but as quickly as we're hiring new officers, we have 27 officers retiring next March, I believe. We have more beds becoming available, which was a major issue in the last election between the sheriff. I think we're moving forward on that. We're moving forward for more facilities at the jail, for a new facility there. But again, economic development, jobs for me, and safety, and also protecting our agricultural heritage for San Joaquin County.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Mr. Clockey and be addressed to Mr. Munson.
Well, the supervisors voted 3-2 to turn down $80 million to build a new jail and increase jail capacity by hundreds of beds. The majority said they did so because the county could not afford the increased staffing. How would you have voted and why?
Well, it's interesting. I have a question on that because right now we're proceeding to apply for a $40 million grant to build the jail. And after working and talking with Steve, our sheriff basically, Steve Moore, he figures now that they can do a transition, build a new jail and transition from the old jail to the new jail and adequately staff the jail. So it's a question I still ask, but that is his position on it in our last discussion. So it's questionable if that was a political decision or what type of decision that was at that time. For me, not being there, I don't have the answer to that. I would delve into it and make sure we have the proper finances to adequately provide for services in the jail facilities. I mean, we've built a lot of jail facilities over the last 15 years and continue to put people in jail all the time. I think some of our funds should be used to keep people out of jail.
Thank you, Mr. Winn.
Well, I was fortunate to start when this bond money was first available. I was on a task force with the sheriff and various members of the cities and county. And from the very outset, I mean, it was clear there wasn't really any revenue stream to run this facility. Back then, it was like, I think we were talking about $45 million. I think it jumped to $70 million by the time they actually were going to build the jail. I agree with the decision that the board made at the time. I think that obviously there's no reason to build a facility that you can't staff or you can't use. And if you can't, then it goes back to the state. And the county was going to use $25 million of their money to assist in the building of that facility. The other side of it, since then, things have changed with realignment, and I think it's important to look at not just the incarceration, because the sheriff's come up with additional beds without a lot of additional capital investment. Double bunking, for example, the pre-screening process to keep more people out that really don't need to be behind bars. But the other part of it is that there's also been funding available, and Russ mentioned it. There's funding for alternatives, and one is a rehabilitation program to transition inmates back to society. Since these inmates are no longer in jail for less than a year, now they look 4, 5, 6 years. So from that standpoint, I think it's important to look at the total corrections picture and not just one component, putting people behind bars, but looking at keeping them out.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw, you have the next question, and it will be addressed to Mr. Winn.
Yes. Agriculture contributes billions of dollars to the San Joaquin County economy. What is your perspective on converting ag land to other uses? How would you move your perspective forward?
Well, first of all, ag land is probably gaining in value on a daily basis, and obviously you've seen the increase in crops that have been very successful in generating more economy or more economic development in this county. As the mayor and city council member, one of the things we've always looked at is that every city has what they call infill or vacant property within their city limits. And what happens is that back in 2005, I instituted a change in our planning program to entice developers to build either affordable housing or senior housing or basically I want to say the third part was industry in the city itself. And the reason for that, I'd rather have it built there where we have the infrastructure and the costs are down, as opposed to taking precious ag land and building out in the county. The other part is once those projects are built out in the county, oftentimes they don't necessarily meet the standards of the city that grows out to them. And so if you look around, for example, Stockton being an example, there's a large portion of Stockton that's not city because either they didn't annex it or because of the standards which were in place, or more importantly, because the residents chose not to be in there. So I would like to see a more cohesive growth between the city and county to make sure that we maintain our ag land as much as we can and develop the inner city to provide those facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Winn. Mr. Munson.
May I have the question one more time?
Certainly.
Agriculture, excuse me, contributes billions of dollars to the San Joaquin County economy. What is your perspective on converting ag land to other uses, and how would you move your perspective forward?
First of all, most of the cities in San Joaquin County have growth control measures in place at this time, and the new general plan for the county directs all residential growth into the cities, which is very important. For years, there's been arguments on how do we save ag land. The best way to save ag land is to let development take place in cities. Basically, when you look at an average development, there's about 5 units per acre. If you go out to the county, as a pilot, I've flown up and down California for the last 30 years, basically not the last 10, but what you see is more and more development going out into the county, going into a 2-acre piece, a 5-acre piece, or a 10-acre piece. That becomes, for the most part, an unproductive agricultural piece. It's not a farm. It's a beautiful place with a lot of grass that a lot of people enjoy. The movement to the city to allow development to take place in the city, to get greater use out of the land within the city, that being what's available today as vacant parcels. I mean, you take a look at the city of Stockton. We have a tremendous opportunity with the channel to develop there and provide some great housing, affordable housing there, and all others. of undeveloped property within the city of Stockton. Other cities have the same as well, but the growth measures that are in place in all of our cities in San Joaquin County are in place to save ag ground.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mr. Bivens, and it is addressed to Mr. Munson.
Okay. What joint city-county agreements would you put in place for the public safety in unincorporated areas for sidewalks and bikeways? We have, like on Pershing, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's no agreement, and the kids can't get to school, so they're not safe. So what would you do to have joint city and county agreements?
That's a real good question. Right now, I know there is an issue in Woodbridge with that issue at hand, and that's a sidewalk for the kids to walk to school, the Woodbridge Elementary. It's a budget issue, basically, right now. If you take a look at the county and the budget, and we, from the Board of Supervisors, have the ability to provide funding out of our budget for that infrastructure. There may be grants available for it as well. To work in a joint powers agreement with the city and to help furnish those items, that's a project to be worked on. To have an answer for that right now, I think it's certainly commendable that we do that, but in most cases it has to be based on a scheduled basis as to the funds available to complete it.
Thank you. Mr. Winn?
Well, first of all, every city, every municipality, and the county, they have certain funds that are allocated for certain purposes, and it's very difficult at times to move those funds from one pot to another. Some of the council members call it the color of money because you have to use them in a particular way. And if you don't, actually, you can be criminally prosecuted by mingling certain funds for certain projects. The issue is ongoing. The 12 years I've been on the council, every year we talk about that particular issue. In Ripon alone, we have, which is a small city, we have $70 million that it would take to repair our roads, which includes the sidewalks itself. And so what we've done is incrementally each year, we set aside certain money specifically for the sidewalks like Russ talked about in Woodbridge. And I think, unfortunately, it isn't really a matter of collaborating between city and county. It's a matter that each entity has to make it a priority and do as much as they can in regards to changing those particular neighborhoods to be more friendly to obviously pedestrians. So I don't think, to be honest with you, I think everybody's trying to do their very best, and I think by virtue of that, it's probably one of those things that everybody works on individually, and for that reason, I'm not sure that a city-county partnership would be feasible based upon the limited amount of funds available from each entity. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Mr. Clockey to Mr. Winn.
District 4 is oddly shaped and meandering, taking in both portions of the northern part of the county and the southern part of the county. The two of you live kind of in the extremes. What have you done to build support and let the people in each other's area know that you'll be there for them?
Well, for me, I know I spent a lot of time throughout the district, and I've spent a lot of time in Lodi meeting literally hundreds of people. I think one of the things that I would point to is the thing that I found most interesting is that Mickey Grove is really a great destination point for individuals coming to the county. And by virtue of that, I've talked to the Historical Society, I've talked to the museum docents, I've talked to various people who are familiar with Mickey Grove. It has a golf course. But I think there's great potential there, and not just in Mickey Grove, but I see an opportunity for what they call ag tourism. And I would see the vision of having, for example, a tourist center for agriculture at Mickey's Grove in a public-private partnership that it would be built by the private sector, but the public sector of the county would offer the land. The second thing I would see is a convention center, which would obviously be a great asset to the entire county by drawing in people. And I know that there's a lot of opportunities by bringing people from outside to the various wineries and different facilities are available. I was talking to a gentleman who had a restaurant at one time, and he was talking about a facility with cheese and honey and wine, et cetera. So I see an opportunity for ag tourism as a destination point at Mickey Grove, which is the north end of the county, but also to facilitate by bringing people in to the south part of the county to facilitate those type of agricultural products that need exposure. So that's me basically looking at both ends of the district.
Thank you. Mr. Munson.
I think you better repeat the question on this one.
Okay, certainly.
Sure. District 4 is kind of an oddly shaped district that takes in both the northern part of the county and portions of the southern part of the county. The two of you live in kind of the extremes of the district. What have you done to convince the voters in each other's area that you'll be there for them and that you know what their issues are?
Right, that's what I thought the question was. Basically, you have to make a commitment to meet the people within the district. You have to go to the meetings, which we've been doing, both Chuck and I, for the last year, attending all the different meetings that are available in the county. I think Ken Vogel has set the bar as supervisor in our district, and I think that's something we want to continue to do. That's attending the MAC meetings, the city council meetings if necessary, but everything in the county that's out there basically. And these are the things that we've done to help or get to meet the people in the different parts of the district. It is from Lodi to Ripon, it's 35 minutes unless you go at 5 o'clock, which is going to be an hour. There's significant problems with transportation on 99 right now. But basically it's the commitment that we as a supervisor have to make on our own to meeting the people within the district, and that's taken our time. Anybody thinks running for supervisor is easy or performing the job is going to be easy. It's not. It's the ability to move throughout the county, meet with your constituents, and be there for them. They need to be able to talk to you and get the input into you so you can make great decisions at the county level. And that's what I'm committing to do. I know how to move around the county very well. I know where the meetings are, the important ones to be at, and that's what brings people together. You have to have all the input from the county departments and from the different agencies within it.
Thank you. Our next question from Ms. Shaw will be directed to Mr. Munson.
Substance use rehabilitation services and mental health services are two important county responsibilities that affect other areas such as crime, job readiness, and homelessness. How would you strengthen the substance abuse or use rehab programs and mental health programs for our county?
Again, a great question for a supervisor. I think it comes back to the budget process of the supervisor and establishing a policy where we're going to pay more attention to it, provide more funding for those departments that deal with it. I think we have serious issues with drugs in the county, and we'll continue to have them. It comes from all different departments that we have, whether it be the Sheriff's Department or the different agencies that we provide funds for. A lot of these are state mandated, and we provide the funding for them. But again, with the lack of revenue that we've had in the past few years due to the lower economy, it is now recovering, and we can provide more funding for some of these agencies to work on the problem. As far as being a supervisor, what we can do is establish the policies where we focus on this and provide the funding.
Thank you. Mr. Winn.
Well, one of the things that I've really appreciated knowing more about is the San Joaquin Hospital. It has been a facility that I think back in 2009 had a $25 million deficit. I think this year it's between 9 or 10, maybe $11 million. In other words, it's been reduced. And I think that's because of the administration, the Board of Supervisors, and certainly the Affordable Care Act in some ways are starting to pay the hospital for some of the treatments that previously were just free. And I think by virtue of that, by making the hospital stronger and more financially strengthened, I think you have the opportunity to add additional programs that weren't available previously. The other thing is we've talked in the past about VA, and I know everybody's aware of what's going on nationally. I would like to see San Joaquin County partner with the VA to provide facilities for veterans that are not necessarily need to be done at a veterans hospital. And by virtue of that, we could build facilities with mental health, PTSD, all those things, and we could facilitate not only that particular group, but certainly our own residents in better treatment by staffing it with more physicians or psychologists or whatever, but also providing more facilities. And I think going back to public safety, that's one of the biggest problems we have with crime is most of those individuals are basically in there because either they were under the influence or they were stealing because they wanted a fix, et cetera. So the more we can focus towards that, the less we have to focus in the future in regards to prisoner jail facilities.
Thank you. Our next question for Mr. Bivens, addressed to Mr. Winn.
We can all agree that jobs are needed for the economic health of San Joaquin County. What specifically is your plan to create more jobs with the inclusion of minorities, and how will this be monitored to ensure that minorities are being included?
Well, first of all, I think that I'm of the belief that first, government doesn't necessarily create jobs by itself. It creates an environment by which private sector can create jobs. And so, first and foremost, I think you need to look at the regulations that the county imposes. There's a lot of state and federal that we have no control over, but at least make it more friendly to business to come into this county. Because I believe that no matter what sector, whether it be the ag sector or the high-tech sector or the port or whatever it happens to be, each time you add another element to increase that particular facility, there are going to be more jobs. And as those particular facilities rise in employment, and the benefits of bringing money in, like the tourist center I was talking about earlier, by bringing more money into the county, there are more jobs because more people are going out to dinner, they're buying houses, et cetera. So by virtue of that, you raise it. Specifically to your question, though, I think there's opportunities, and what I would point to is education. You really need to catch them when they're in school so that they have the opportunity to really compete in the job market. So I teach college. I've been teaching college for 8 years. I love the students who are there because they want to make a better life for themselves. So I would focus on education, because without the education, they can't compete for those jobs in any sector. So that would be my first priority. Secondly, as I think by virtue of that, we would want to include as many as possible into the job force to make sure that they all have an equal opportunity to make a life for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Munson.
I'd like to question one more time.
Certainly.
Okay. We can all agree that jobs are needed for the economic health in San Joaquin County. What specifically is your plan to create more jobs with the inclusion of minorities, and how will this be monitored to ensure that minorities are being included?
Well, first of all, in my own business today, I have about 30% of minorities that work for me. Basically, over the past years in development and business in San Joaquin County, I've seen a tremendous amount of opportunities for jobs, and that includes all kinds of minorities. The key is that we have a good economic development here in the county where those jobs are provided. Education, I agree on that. Our Latino population, there's only 50% of the Latinos right now in high school that graduate. That's ridiculous. We need to spend more time with the kids to get them through high school and to graduate, and we even have to go back into the lower grade levels to make sure they can read so they even have an opportunity to get through high school. Basically, jobs are out there. I talk to many different businesses throughout the county that can't find qualified people to work. And this is probably the most important thing we can do, is educate our kids and give them some kind of vocational training so they can take these jobs. But again, it's the work ethic that we've really lost from my point of view, and it's just something that's critical to this county that we continue to work on it. That's the education of our kids, because the jobs are here, and I think the minority jobs are there, and as far as monitoring them, I guess I have to stop.
Thank you. Our next question for Mr. Clockey, addressed to Mr. Munson.
Under the statewide shift known as realignment that went into effect in 2011, San Joaquin County now has responsibility for more criminal offenders for their incarceration, supervision, and rehabilitation. At this point, what has the county done well in that regard, and where does it need to improve?
As far as doing well, I'm not sure we are doing well. We're abiding by AB 109, and I think the biggest issue we're facing is those prisoners that are being released right now. In talking to some of the people within the county that are more familiar with what the issues are, that being Jim Willett, our district attorney, one of the problems, we can find some jobs for these fellows that are being released. The biggest problem that they face right now is finding a place to live. And that's an issue that has come forth. We've tried all different kinds of policies and plans for the different prisoners that are being released, and it's just a very difficult problem, and it's something we're going to have to continue to work on. As far as having a solution to it, I don't have a solution to it right now. I just have a position that we need to continually focus on it to get better. And there's so many issues that impact it that it's going to be a long time before we really solve it.
Thank you. Mr. Winn.
Well, first of all, I think, unfortunately, it was not a good idea to incarcerate state prisoners in county jails. But having said that, it doesn't matter because it's here and it's basically a reality. A couple things. First of all, I think going back to the previous question in regards to the new jail facility, I think by virtue of turning down the $80 million, I think the county, and I say the Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff Moore, the probation chief, Stephanie James, the district attorney, Jim Willett, I think they all have worked together, and from what I understand, put forth a fantastic plan which has become a model for other counties throughout the state. Now, having said that, we talked about the pre-screening process, but there is money available for community corrections facilities, and these are the ones, lack of a better term, call them halfway houses. One of the things we've lost is we've lost the ability to rehabilitate prisoners who are incarcerated. If we can find or educate them, get them off substance abuse, et cetera, and keep at least 10 to 20% of those individuals from coming back, because we have about a 70-75% recidivism rate, we can really cut down on the crime, we can cut down on the costs, and by virtue of that, we can make this a safer county. So that would be my approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question from Ms. Shaw to Mr. Winn.
What role does the Board of Supervisors have in ensuring that drought restrictions put into effect in August of this year will be effectively enforced? And how will you ensure that water conservation steps remain a high priority in non-drought years?
Well, one of the things that I mean, all municipalities have had to deal with by the state mandate in regards to a reduction in water usage. The key word in your question is enforce. I mean, we all have regulations required by the state. The question is when you have people who violate those particular restrictions, whether it be the day of watering or wasting water, et cetera. So if that happens, how do you correct that problem? We've done a couple things in our city. One of the first things we did, we found that a lot of residents don't have any idea of how to reprogram their sprinkler system, and therefore it would run forever or 3 or 4 times a day. And so we offer as a free service to the public. In fact, one of our council members took advantage of it to go reprogram their sprinkler system so that it watered only on the days that were allowed. Secondly, to cut down the water time. The other thing is that we use our police officers, and I don't say this in an enforcement arm, but our public employees who go around, and if they see any wasted water, et cetera, we usually do a warning. Because a lot of people, frankly, because they water early in the morning, they don't know. They may have a broken sprinkler. So what I'm saying is it has to be incremental. We have to catch those situations that are being abusive, and sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, and then correct the problems. If it isn't corrected, then we need to force it and take stronger steps, and possibly through litigation. So all these things in place, plus we only have half our cities on meters, so we're moving to put the rest of the city on meters. That will also obviously cut down on the amount of use. So all these things collectively, I think you can use in regards to making sure that people are conscious, because frankly, a lot of people really don't see the problem because the water comes on when they turn on the faucet, and they don't realize that we're in a drought, and if we don't get any more water, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Munson.
I'd like to question one more time.
What role does the Board of Supervisors have in ensuring that drought restrictions put into effect in August this year will be effectively enforced? And how will you ensure that water conservation steps remain a high priority in non-drought years?
The reason I asked that question to be repeated was basically what's happening in the county right now is that state has come in and put a lot of restrictions on the users of water in the entire county, in fact, the entire state. So they're implementing controls right now where we have to meter the wells. In the future, we're going to have to do reports on what type of, how much water we're actually pumping on those wells. And basically, they're putting in place a system where the local agencies, those are the local water districts, will be monitoring the wells. And actually, they even have fines that can be in place right now for those users if they're not using the water properly. They've done some restrictions on some of the surface water that we have available to the farmers. And if you add what the state is doing statewide to all the agricultural properties and to what the cities are doing, as my opponent just talked about with the restrictions, we've had the same thing in Lodi for some time. You have cities now that are pretty much all have water meters being installed. So I think we're making every effort to do that. Basically, just the availability of water is going to control us all, because what's going to happen, if anybody was ever around when we had the last drought over in Monterey, I think that you were allotted so much per household, and they charge you $35 a gallon if you went over your amount.
Thank you. Our last question will come from Mr. Bivens, and it will be directed to Mr. Munson.
To the candidates, what is the best way to bring together members of the community with diverse viewpoints and interests? Please provide an example when you have helped make this happen.
That's for me.
Yes.
Well, when I built Wine and Roses, that's what happened. I brought together 35 members of our community that believed in what we were doing at Wine and Roses, basically to partner up to make a commitment to the city of Lodi and to the ag industry to build a facility that would promote ag tourism in Lodi. In my past experience over the 35 years of working within the county on different types of development, I've brought many people together, people that have been opposed to the development, also people that were in favor of it, to make provisions where we could continue, as well as bringing different consultants together, bringing different agencies together. These are the things you have to work with, and that's what I bring to the board right now, is the ability to bring people together, use common sense, and create solutions. But you have to have that ability. You have to have done it in the past, which I have done. And as an example, I gave you Wine and Roses.
Thank you. Mr. Winn?
Well, I'm one who believes in community pride, and by virtue of that, we've done a lot of things in Ripon which have brought the entire community together. And although, you know, some would see us as a particular demographic, we really have all segments that you would find throughout the county. And one of the things that I've appreciated, especially when we experienced the decrease in revenues and we had to unfortunately lay off some of our employees, et cetera, is that we had a need in the community because we no longer had the staffing available to take care of some of our public services. And we went out and we had a program by which individuals could volunteer and do things like tot lots, maintaining those types of things, painting, you know, curbs and stuff like that. We would have work days. And I attended some of those work days, and we even had, I'm sure most of you heard of the Love there's usually 2 times, Love Ripon, for example, Love Modesto, Love Stockton, et cetera, where the entire community comes together. On those days, there's probably 400, 500 volunteers who actually come together and go throughout the city for one day. And by virtue of that, they come from all demographics, all sizes, all ages, et cetera. What I see is I see a cohesiveness within the community because we're all focused on making our community better. And I think when we can do those things away from some of the distractions that often occur, I think we're stronger, and I think we have an opportunity to meet those that maybe normally we wouldn't meet. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now time for closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for his statement, and first will be Mr. Munson.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. Why did I run? Basically, I felt a year ago that I had the experience looking at the board to bring something to the board that they haven't had in the past. That's a tremendous amount of experience here in the county. I'm a businessman. I'm bringing a business approach to the Board of Supervisors. I look at that as a very important job, but it is a job. It's a business to run. Our budget is $1.35 billion this year, and basically we need somebody with a business approach. Employ people. I know what the issues are out there. Like I said, employing 250 people and their families, and the things I've done in the past, being on the chamber board, being the chairman of the board, working with Visit Lodi, bringing together the bid for the city of Lodi for ag tourism, worked on that. I just think I have the abilities. I could go into my whole background if I wanted to, but a bio is currently available on my website if you care to look. I have tremendous experience. In each one of my experiences, whether I was a pilot in the Navy or in the computer business with newspapers, which Mr. Joaquin knows about, or working with ag tourism and development within the county, I've always been able to create results. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a flashy speaker. I don't have all the numbers, but let me tell you, I can make a decision and I can move this county forward, and that's what I bring to the county of San Joaquin.
Thank you. Mr. Winn.
Well, I've been fortunate in my lifetime to spend 37 years with the Highway Patrol, and I see 3 elements that are key to holding office. The first is integrity, and I spent those 37 years obviously enforcing law, but I spent 6.5 years working internal affairs. I was the cop's cop. In other words, I went after officers or individuals who not only violated policy, but oftentimes violated the law. So that's one component, and I feel strongly that is a necessary component certainly to hold office, to maintain the honesty that you hold. The second component is leadership. See, I'm a visionary. I've always, whether it's been with the CHP or with the city, I've always had great delight in challenges to make things better. And so as a visionary, for example, I talked about the ag tourism in Mickey Grove. I see a great opportunity for this county to really expand ag tourism throughout the district and throughout the county itself. So I'm a visionary, and I like to move things forward. And that takes leadership, and one has to have, the ability to stand firm and to move forward. The last is governance. And by virtue, what I mean by governance is oftentimes what I see is that on a board or a council, whatever, there's look at the national state, there's a lot of friction and nothing gets done. See, I find in most issues that probably those who disagree with, we probably agree on about 80% of the component of that. It's the 20% that we argue over. And I've had to give up things on the council, on the Council of Governments, on the Regency Policy Council, which is 8 counties. And so all those particular boards that I've served on, it takes a collaboration of knowing people and working with them to get things done. See, I think governance is important. People are elected to office to get things done, not to fight with each other. And that's one of the things that I've worked against. So from that standpoint, the integrity, the vision or the leadership, and the last is the governance. Those are 3 things that I have a lot of experience, decades of experience at. Thank you.
Thank you. As our forum draws to a close, I would like to thank, first of all, the participants with the questions, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Bivens, Mr. Clockey. We greatly appreciate your time and focus. And thank you also to the candidates, Mr. Munson and Mr. Winn. It's been a very enjoyable evening listening and learning, and I'm sure the audience would like to thank you for your participation.
Can I make a quick comment? And it just has nothing to do with, that is the most professional timekeeper I've had the experience of being with. She is on top of it, and Russ and I have done tons of these, but congratulations, I would give you a pay raise if I had the opportunity, but anyway, that's my comment.
I would also like to remind everyone to register to vote by October 20th, if they haven't already. You can register online at the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.ca.gov. There are easy guide voter guides in English and Spanish outside the chambers in the lobby to help us understand the 11 propositions. They're provided by the League, and they are free, so please help yourself. And this form is going to be available for viewing probably next week on Channel 97 and also on the League of Women Voters YouTube site. So once again, thank you very much for your participation, and have a good evening.